Okay, good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, let me welcome you all on behalf of all of the Provost Teaching Academy, both the academic staff and all of us who are mentors in that program. And it's really great to have you here at ASU. And it's really our intent with these workshops is really to, how would I say, turbo assist what your interests are and to really find ways to take your passions, take your energy, and really share it with our community here and to really inspire the next generation. Our next workshop is going to be on Wednesday, October 5th. It is going to be on large lectures. How many of you are teaching a large lecture? That's called 60 students and above. Okay, well, congratulations. I'm glad that you have escaped that, but coming soon will be one of those particular lectures, which are tremendously changed from probably when you were an undergraduate. And I really encourage you to go around the campus and see those. Come and see the workshop, and we'll be more than happy to show you some of the new techniques that we're doing face-to-face, online, utilizing flipped classrooms with 500 students. We're doing all sorts of things that are fairly inventive. Jean is doing a plant propagation class utilizing a greenhouse, and we'll present that also. So feel free to come along and see that. But today what we're going to focus on is technological enhanced teaching in a flipped classroom. Bobby, Willie, and I are putting this together. We're doing a set of workshops, and this is the first one in that particular series, which will be pretty much an overview. So to help you is, let's kind of get an outline on what we're going to do today. So in the first workshop, what we're going to do is talk briefly about the larger context of teaching at ASU, and at Plus, we'll talk about what is a technologically enhanced teaching, why do it, what's a flipped classroom, what are some of the best teaching strategies, what new technologies are out there, and most importantly, save a half hour or 35 minutes so we can sit around and talk about things that you're interested in and are really thinking about. Because we want to learn not just from us, but from you, ways that we're not looking at it. It's also like learning from your students who walk around and think about the world and construct the world in a new way. Workshop 2 and 3 will occur on Wednesday, the 16th of November, and sometime in the spring. It is a hands-on session. So instead of this overview, bring your laptop, bring the things that you're interested in, and we have a sign-up sheet that I'll pass around. So if you're interested in any particular new technology or pedagogy of Flipped, write it in here. And that's how we're going to structure the next hands-on sessions. We will also connect you with people at the university who are doing those. So it isn't just hearing, oh, well, this is how you use the technology. Oh, no, this is pedagogically how we're changing the way we teach or how it is evolving. So think of it more like a planted garden that's kind of growing and changing and harvesting and always being updated. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pass this around. So let's jump in. First of all, the most important thing is understanding the 5 realms of teaching and learning that we have at ASU. And this is sort of how we see the world. We see, first of all, on the left, we see this idea of a technologically enhanced on-campus set of courses. Much like you probably did during your graduate work, where you went to a particular class, face-to-face interfaces, office hours, mentors, going out and having field experiences with, of course, masters in your field. And on the other hand, we have sort of 3 other realms which deal with different technologically enhanced spaces. Online, what we call massive online, which you will hear about in just a moment, and then what we call exploration or embedded technologies. So EdPlus is our blanket organization that pulls all of this together. And the PowerPoint itself is posted on the website, so feel free to follow along, or you can just download it and get all the information and links. But what you'll see is that we have 4 realms that we really work in, in Ed+. So Ed+ is not just ASU Online. It's a whole suite of ways, or how would I say, visions of what education can be. So the first one is what we're going to talk about today, the technologically enhanced or flipped classroom model, where we take an existing classroom, we add technology, we add changes of pedagogy, and transform it. The second one is what we will call the online component, 100% online. There's 83,000 students who are online right now. They are all over the world. I teach a freshman course. I have people on all 7 continents who take the course in real time around the world, do collaborative work online, utilizing Google Plus Hangouts and YouTube videos, but I'm not going to talk about that today. We also have what's called the Starbucks program, which allows anyone who works for a Starbucks to, of course, take courses online, which is a huge thing. We also, the third one is the Global Freshman Academy, where we have partnered with edX and doing these massively online courses. For instance, Don Johansson, well, before I do that, the Freshman Global Academy allows you to take courses, sign up, and as you matriculate through the course, you can decide whether you're doing it for free or you're doing it for credit. So you actually can go along, succeed, then apply and do that. I've shown you Don Johansson, who of course is Discovery, our famous scientist who of course discovered Lucy. He's teaching an introduction to anthropology with about 14,000 students in it. So it's a kind of amazing. Feel free to go to edX ASU or Ed+ ASU, and you can go through these. There's an amazing astronomy course where you actually are in a spacecraft and kind of work on astrophysics, which is a kind of amazing thing. And the last one is what we call at Ed+, the immersive simulation and exploration. Now, what that is, in the case of the Mayo Clinic, is we create an environment in which students, in this case nursing students, actually go into the Mayo Clinic, work with patients virtually, see the situations that they might encounter, what happens if someone has a condition, how do we deal with an emergency, how do we deal with the spread of disease, versus walking in the hospital and doing this live. So it's a way to create gamification, a kind of immersive environment. What's next? There's probably 5 or 6 other venues that Ed+ might investigate. Your research, maybe, an area you're interested in. Could you implant something? Maybe that's the future of education. What other models aren't we thinking about? So feel free to contact any of us dealing with edX. So the third part is this question of what is technologically enhanced teaching. How many of you right now do technologically enhanced teaching? Use a website, use video, PowerPoints, anything that isn't just you talking in the front of the room. So you're already doing this, okay? So I think the question is, how is this changing? So we are, as it says at the bottom there, it is blended learning, where at one time we're not just adding technology for technology's sake, we're adding it for impact. So we're taking traditional face-to-face situations and we want to transform them into a more meaningful kind of experience. So as you'll see here on this chart, it goes through a whole variety of ways that can be done, from face-to-face, live online, coaching, actually, or mentoring. For instance, finding a doctor, having live chats for 15 minutes once a week as a graduate student could be one of those situations. Community collaborations. In my big freshman course, we work with non-for-profits all over Arizona. The students work virtually with Skype and Google+, raise money, do projects for them. Multimedia, web-based learning. Of course, we're moving to things that definitely are asynchronous, which allows people to time shift, right? Because they're working full-time, because they're deployed in the military, they're working. We have people all over the world taking these particular courses in that way. But I think, just to get you to think about it, it's not just that we have this range of technologies. How are they different? What is a face-to-face? What is someone who at one time is working 100% online, but then has to come together in a Skype situation and work with others, or evaluate, or go out and interview someone in their community? Why do it? If you look at a lot of education theory today, you will hear about personal learning networks. And you'll hear this over and over and over as a way of thinking about the future and how we're trying to deal with the next generation. Is have them create a network of virtual sources, online sources, community face-to-face resources, being exposed to the questions and living through those particular questions. All of those exist. I actually personally call it an ecology because I think it's a living system. I don't think it is just a digital network. And there's a lot of education theory that splits those two things. But I tend, because I come from design and the environment, that I tend to think of it as a living ecology. That there are different species, there are flora, there are fauna, there are those exchanges that make that happen, that are crucial to what we do. The fourth one is, what is a flipped classroom? Now this is totally different than just embedding technology. Flipping the classroom is literally transforming what we are doing so that the particular instruction moves from the space of the classroom into this individual learning space. And that's an important shift that occurs with it. And then, as it says, you want that new group space to be transformative. So in the case of my own course, videos that they watch, lectures they watch, assignments they do online, then coming together virtually, they actually exchange, discuss, post, do YouTube videos about working through exercises together. That becomes really important as a way to flip the classroom. In my smaller graduate courses, totally different, right? They do that research, they go out and interview professionals working in the field, they come back, and then we have debates, conversations, role-playing, a lot of other ways to begin to push that forward. There's a beautiful site called fliplearning.org. If you have not seen that website, definitely it's one of the major resources out there. I would really push you in that direction to look at that as an opportunity. So why use it? I think the important thing is relative to building this ecology, to really think about a combination, as you see on the right, of multiple simultaneous activities, each fairly targeted in how they, complement each other is really important. So that one time you might be watching podcasts, pre-recording lectures, navigating websites, beginning to at one time understand the material through peer-to-peer discussion and collaboration. Applying the material might be out in the community, it might be out in the clinic or the lab in that particular case, and how students really take individualized instruction, i.e. their own projects, their own interests, and create projects out of that. So it's that kind of fourfold approach that makes it very, very effective. Okay, so let me next try to show you some of the best new teaching strategies for these type of classes. If you go over to language, you will see the English as a foreign language classes dealing with active learning, allowing people to utilize the language, record situations that are out in a foreign country and allow people to learn by that interaction and then speak to that. There is also collaborative learning. Probably one of the best ones here at ASU is, of course, the Mars Space Flight Center, which puts students in those collaborative scientific teams that understand the questions these scientists are asking out with the rover and other projects we're involved in. The third one is case-based learning, which would be like ASU Health Solutions down on the downtown campus. In this case, it is the teaching of anatomy, allowing people to not only dissect things, but as you can see, begin to look very carefully at imaging, talking to doctors for people who are interpreting those images and understanding the relationship between that. Literature review is the fourth one. The ASU Art History, Graduate Art History program works with the National Women's Museum in Washington, D.C., dealing with photo archives. And the students here at ASU in art history actually open those various files that haven't been sorted, begin to research with original materials, making interpretations, writing their paper, so it's really engaged with those real resources. Problems-based learning is, of course, health solutions, looking at a case-by-case situation. Live demonstration, that would, of course, be ASU Human Systems Engineering out at the East Campus. In this case, teaching people how to be a support team for a drone. How do we keep this up and running? How does it all come together? They're also doing flight simulators, because flight simulators are not as passive as they once were, but are very, very active. There's also debate. The ASU Cronkite School has a wonderful set of journalistic voices, which goes out in the community, and these journalists go out and interview Hispanic voices and do this amazing blog, putting that together. Gamification is, of course, ASU Education, and they have a beautiful, simulation called Quest to Teach, where students are placed in a virtual classroom, elementary classroom, and scenarios are ran through it. Oh, disruptive students. Oh, they didn't turn in their homework. Oh, there is a shooter that walks in. I mean, it goes through these amazing scenarios of how to do that. So by the time our interns go out and deal in the community here, they're prepared for those particular scenarios. If you want to go over and see it, amazing class where you see this happening simultaneously and live. It's just breathtaking. Live resources, natural resources, actually dealing with groundwater sensing and the management of that, going out in the field and utilizing response systems. Podcasting, I do a lot of podcasting where the students create the podcasts and YouTube videos. Really, they know the new technology and really allowing them to look at that. They're very visually acute, right? So they have to write, and they actually have to write visually also. Multimedia, the School of Social Transformation, deals with gender and ethnicity by actually, in this case, programming robots. So having a set of robotics that come together to deal with these social situations. So it's a really interesting way to put it together. And then, of course, portfolios. To actually have portfolios that the students create. One of the nicest ones that I like is the Herberger Young Scholars Academy. And this is a parent-teacher conference where the students themselves, in this case high school students, have to create portfolios and lead their discussion with their parents and teachers on their performance. An amazing reversal of what we normally see. So what kinds of new technologies are available out there? Obviously, web-based instruction, virtual classrooms. This, of course, is a student in biodesign who was with me over in Turkey, sitting there, of course, dealing with his life science research in the lab, virtually connecting with that, with a virtual classroom. Even though we were in the middle of Cappadocia, in the middle of Turkey, he just would sit down for the hour, open his laptop, and be immediately immersed. Social media, in the design school, we worked with orphans in Ethiopia, and at one time created a new orphanage, and one of the ways to get the community embedded was through utilizing various social media to pull that together. Microblogging, ASU School of Sustainability, the wonderful food futures, debating what the future of food was, taking microblogs and creating those so that the students, local purveyors of various food, local distributors, local health organizations, the food inspectors, restaurant chefs, were all part of this blog to discuss what the futures of food be. Gamification, I'm back again, aren't I? Is of course, and the reason I put it in twice is this, okay? Your students have between 15,000 and 20,000 hours of gaming before they enter as freshmen. They have more, okay, not maybe more, about the same as Bill Gates had in software exposure before he went to Harvard, right? So it's important to understand the makeup of your students. James G is, of course, a MacArthur Fellow and is one of the leading researchers in the Center for Gaming and Impact, or Games and Impact, which is not just education, but throughout various venues. And the last one that I'll actually talk about is, of course, mobile education, dealing with health solutions, and for instance, American Sign Language. We have students who have learning impairments, who actually have physical, how would I say, disability, not really, I would say impairments, which they really need to be exposed to and find the ways that they can use the technology. In this particular case, here is this amazing deaf student in the middle of campus, sitting in one of the public spaces, actually signing, and other people would come up and sit down with him and have conversations. It was just an amazing thing. So it's not, I have to go into a private room, but it's a public forum of how these technologies are really changing what we do and what's there. So before we move on into the conversation and the discussion, what I would say is the thing to always remember is why and how. Why are you doing this? How are you going to go about this? Have a clear pedagogical vision. And I grew up surfing, so that vision might change, right? Like there's a bigger wave or a shark comes by, right? So I'm always willing to modify, transform my pedagogical vision as it unfolds. And also use very impactful tools. No tool is 100% right. Be willing to allow it to change. Be willing to trust your students. Allow them to start to develop tools with you. So that's the presentation of sort of an introduction to this. And what I'd like to do now is stop me talking and really hear from you. Go ahead.
I'd like to mention, you talked about portfolios. This fall at ASU, approximately 35,000 students are using Digication, which is an e-portfolio platform that's available to all faculty. You can gain access to it in your My ASU space. And it's been used in first-year composition for a few years now, but it's spreading throughout the university. And a lot of students are using it on their own. But it's very user-friendly. It allows for all sorts of collection of data for the university, so it's a terrific tool.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, because of its links through LinkedIn and some of the other alumni networks of professionals globally, it's been very, very effective because it allows them to begin to see work in progress, not so much completed work, but work that is constantly being changed and altered.
And a lot of them are planning on using this as they enter the job market to be able to present the kind of work they've done to employers to have an easy record there. So,
will they have access to these educational?
Yes, education will be available to them throughout their lives, and they can decide, by the way, how public to make it. They can keep it just within the class if they want. But students in first-year composition, for example, who've made it public, are getting more than 40,000 hits on their portfolios. That's pretty powerful stuff for a freshman.
So I was just going to ask a question. What are you currently using or contemplating or thinking about?
I'm using portfolios. So I'm recommending to use Digication. There are some students who already create their web pages in a different platform. So I'm allowing them to create the Spanish version because the idea is that they create a bilingual portfolio.
Oh, that's great.
With the website that they currently have. But for those who don't have it, I'm encouraging Digication. And the other thing I use is Wikis.
Okay. And how do you use Wikis?
Oh, to enhance writing transitions.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, in one of my classes, they have to create a site for Latin American food. So each of them is in charge of a country, and we're creating one site for that. So that's, it has content and at the same time the writing part. Those two of them.
Do you have groups working like they did?
No, this class is small, so each of them is in charge of that. Of course, they can edit content at other websites and correct grammar, and I'm going to be like, it's like using Google Docs. I heard that other professors are using that more than Wikis, but I think that it's fun for them to know that, oh, Wiki sounds like, oh, it can be outside the world, so.
Well, and I think the idea that Wiki can be edited, so it
Yes.
doesn't have this master overlay, like, oh, you're putting data in this pre-packaged format. The Wiki allows you, depending on how you access and make the course, to allow them to suddenly add categories, add other.
Yeah, that's the idea, and that also they can trace like how they have been improving their writing because they are able to see like the previous versions.
Yeah.
So that's an advantage.
This is my
Let me
first.
have you introduce. I can read that it's David, but not everybody knows each other. I don't know. This might be the first time you are.
I'm Lorena Cuya. I'm in Cultures and Languages.
Okay, David, go ahead.
So I'm Dave King. I'm in the School of Geographical Sciences and Urban Planning. Before this, I was on the faculty at Columbia University, and I've been teaching in urban planning for a while. And one of the things that I do, because planning is a professional degree, whether it's undergraduate or graduate, I push students to go out in the world. And so one of the challenges I've had is how to take their information and compile it in a way that's meaningful. Like one of the tools that I've used in the past, and I'm interested in this to find out what is available here, is sending students out to measure attributes of the built environment in terms of safety, in terms of comfort, in terms of all kinds of other factors that a planner would worry about. We go around and we look at sidewalks, we look at crosswalks, we look at buildings. As we're walking through neighborhoods, we often don't really pay attention to what that is, but I try and train the students to be critical of that. Like, the building should be closer to the sidewalk so that it gets shade for 3 hours a day, or the crosswalk isn't good for people in wheelchairs and things like that. And so it's a mixture of photographs, drawings, trying to put some categories behind that. So if you take a photograph, you say this is a good sidewalk, you take a photograph of it, and then you have to put it up there, and everybody will know why you think it's a good sidewalk or not, because you will have listed a number of attributes, in which case the next student will look at that, and eventually they'll sort of come to an agreement on, you know, what's a good sidewalk, which doesn't, it sounds sort of banal, but it's actually sort of important when you're dealing with wheelchairs and things like that. And so I found a lot of luck with sort of the free tools, whether it's Tumblr or Google Docs or things like that, but there's also some, the idea that the students want to have a portfolio, that in the end it comes together as sort of a group project that becomes something that they're able to sell to employers and sell to graduate programs, that this is something that they've worked on. But because a lot of what I'm doing, being that it's very practice-oriented, they have to be doing it. Like, I can talk about it for, an hour and a half, twice a week, but that doesn't do them any good if they're not actually out there experiencing it. So, I mean, that's what I've done, and that's what I'm interested in doing here, and finding more of the tools that ASU has to support that.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a lot of tools to do that. I think also just bridging, like, what is it called? Social impact. It used to be called social work, but now it's a Center for Transformational and Social Impact, I believe is what it's called. But they do a lot of that kind of observation. I think one of the things is building up like the BMW Guggenheim Center, which created a public forum where people both that were trained or students and just people from the general public could come in and share information utilizing different types of envisioning tools, words, stories, storytelling, photos, videos, tours where they just simply took a group of people that were concerned, kind of Jane Jacobs, let's go out and let's see our neighborhood. I think finding ways to share that information is really an important way. So it might not just be just internal to your course, but put up a site, make it a kind of public forum in that regard, that the students are feeding.
Well, what's been successful for me is to build on previous years or subsequent years. So the students that will come in this year will see what the students last year did. So that sets expectations. It sets sort of a continuity to all of it, that they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
It sounds good. I mean, I want to see more of it. So maybe next time you can bring, and I would encourage that next time when we have some of these sessions, bring what you're doing and we can put it up and look at it and discuss and think with you, right? Because I think we want to learn about how that worked in New York, how it's going to work out here where everybody's in a car, not on the street, right?
I would say that one of my big concerns with the flipped classroom or distance learning or MOOCs or however it fits in, all of it is one of the most important things that the student can come out of their education with is communication skills. And that requires, from my perspective, a lot of feedback from me, from the TAs, and so on. And with all of this, which I'm very supportive of expanding educational opportunities, but I'm very worried that that key aspect of communication gets lost. Because if a student can't process, think, and write, and present, it doesn't matter how many facts they have floating around their head. And so that's been an ongoing struggle as to how to maintain that balance. Where I can take my smaller classes or my mid-sized classes, I know where I can put the technology in to enhance, but I don't know how scalable it is.
Exactly.
Well, and if I can jump in, so this last spring, I and two colleagues taught first-year composition at Global Freshman Academy, and we had 35,000 students in the class. And we had them working in teams, giving each other feedback on their work throughout the whole semester. So that's another form of communication. And of course, we train them how to do that. And we train them how to evaluate their own communication in those settings as well. And I hear what you're saying about oral communication, but written communication is another forum that students really need to work on.
Well, I think that's all part of it, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I found too, and I agree completely, Dwayne, I haven't done a 35,000 class, but large distance classes, and that is that they do need to be trained to give feedback, and a lot of times we'll use a rubric. The first time, be easy on yourselves, try it out. It works so well if they revise it, but they do need that support. So you're right. In fact, our third workshop, I think in spring, we're going to talk a lot about giving feedback and assessment and scaling, because it can take a lot of your time. You can do it. You can give audio feedback. You can have them do video presentations, even in a distance course. You can have them present all different kinds of ways, real time or not real time, and then give feedback to each other. But you're absolutely right. You've got to kind of watch your time and how you're going to do it. It's all possible. I think that's what's fun right now. And then you just have to kind of figure your way through it, what's the most effective for you as well as.
And to use the other sort of resources. There's the Writing Center, how it interfaces with us, or, as you're saying, really mentor the next students succeeding and taking the course and how they can mentor or assist. We'll really be
Yeah, I mean,
Max?
I agree.
Yes?
Oh, I don't want to interrupt anybody. When you're done, let me know. I had a comment on that. So.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is Bobby Lafford. I'm at the downtown campus here trying to facilitate some things. So we offer downtown a Spanish for the professions minor and certificate, and they're all upper division courses. But according to our national standards for foreign language teaching, we have to work on communication skills, as you said. And there are three types that we talk about: interpretive skills, presentational skills, and interaction skills. And so online. I'm teaching a completely online course, the second I've done in the last year. And for the interpretive, we have them listen to, let's say, YouTube videos, some kind of interaction or interview with a professional in the field, for instance. And then they have to either, write a reaction or come up with an oral reaction, reflection on what they've seen. And so we used to be able to use Google Hangouts. Now we're going to have to migrate to another platform. But what I did was every other week, of course they had written things to do, but I had them either do a self-presentation of, an individual presentation on reflections. And in the PowerPoints I would have, okay, here's the material, now here are your reflection questions. And they would have to then video record themselves answering those questions alone. And then the next week, I would have material for them to look at, questions on a PowerPoint that are more interactive, more of a debate, like, do you agree with your partner on this particular point that we just went over? And so we had them in pairs, and then they could record the pair. And in Google Hangouts, one person would talk, and then the other person would talk. The camera would then switch to them. So we'll have to see what new platforms are out there to take the place of that. But so every other week they either got to present or interact with their peers. Now I realized it would be, and then of course it was captured and I had to grade it. If you're talking about 30,000 students, that may not be something we can do. But most language courses, as Lorena knows, are have a lot fewer students in them. So if you have a relatively small class, meaning under, 50, 30 or 50, you can do all kinds of things to have them do that kind of interaction orally as well as in writing. So this is the kind of thing and the students really enjoyed it. So just a thought.
But I think the other one, David, is professionals, which we didn't kind of allude to, which is the communication with professionals, which ups the ante on your students very quickly. Right, because they're interfacing with doctors, with scientists, other planners out in the city, or in 17 to 19 municipalities around the valley. Suddenly, boom, they get professional, they get more serious about it. So I would say, I would encourage experimenting with this. Go ahead.
I'll be the first to admit I'm really skeptical of the flipped classroom because I've never been in it myself.
Okay.
And I've also been on campus for 5 weeks. That's it. I'm really fresh hire. So what I'm about to say, please keep that in mind. I am definitely not an expert, for sure. This is all new to me. I'm wondering how much of the resources that we've discussed today are really applicable to certain situations and not other ones. What I mean by that is a lot of people, when they hear these different technologies and options, they see, well, how can I use that in my class? Mm-hmm. So while it's really useful to hear how other people are using it in certain situations, if it doesn't cover what you yourself are sort of, involved with, like in my case, I have a 30-person class and I'm doing reinforced concrete design. Now that might lose the audience when I say that because it's not a very exciting topic, like the Mars rover or whatever, but that's where my concern is. I have a 30-person class, and I have to teach them how to design things out of concrete. Mm-hmm. And in my particular case, I'm hearing things like the wikis, the Google Docs, and everything like that. And that's all fine and good, but it sounds, if I sort of paraphrase what I'm thinking, it sounds like you're taking a little more of the education off of the professor and putting it in the realm of the students. But in a case like design courses, not just me, Giuseppe's doing hydrology, SMPTE, CB, all these engineering courses, you all do design. When you do that kind of methodology, number one, I've been told that encourages cheating, encourages lack of, more collaborative means lack of individual knowledge or effort, whatever the case may be. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm just sort of recycling information I've heard. Mm-hmm. And so in my case, when my students have to finish my class, I have to evaluate on can they design a safe parking structure or a bridge or a building? Mm-hmm. Do I trust them to go out in the world to design something that's safe? And so I can encourage collaborative, knowledge or a dialogue exchange, etc. But in the end, they still have to give me their own unique work.
Right.
And so at least I'm wondering, and I don't know if I've actually pinned down yet because this is all sort of new to me. The technologies that I'm using are fairly straightforward: Blackboard, PowerPoint, and I'm probably going to buy an iPad with my startup. Mm-hmm. So those are sort of the technologies that I'm working with right now, or that I want to work with. But what kind of the technologies we've looked at, I could see where they're useful for things like educating 35,000 students. But when you've got a really more intimate classroom, and you have to teach them a process to do design and give you back a number or a beam or a column or something, how these different philosophies can fit into a situation like that. So I guess this is sort of me saying, what can I use out of this?
Right.
And I've heard a lot of examples about things that, I'm sorry to say, from my naive point of view, are not really applicable to my situation.
That is the way you need to think, is what do my students need to learn how to do? Not just how am I going to test them, but what are they going to do in the world? And if you start with that, but if you start with that, that's absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You are in control, and there are so many technologies, and they don't matter in terms of which one you choose. The choosing has to be based on what you need your students to learn how to do. Mm-hmm. So in your case with 30, it might just be bringing speakers in by video, having some conferences with them, talk about their jobs.
That number will increase most likely.
Yeah.
I'm a fresh hire, been on campus 5 weeks, so I think they went easy on me my first term. So.
Half of my job is in CB and engineering, so I got it. Yeah, and our colleagues have 90 in the class, but in
my mentor
classes,
has 90. Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, that's exactly how you want to think. Is what do I need? Not which of those technologies. I mean, there are millions of them now at ASU. But yeah.
So a couple of responses to that. One is, when I think about what they need to do in the world, my understanding of construction is that they often work in teams. And if that's the case, then the more we can get students to work in teams while they're still students, that's great. The other thing is I think back on portfolio, sort of the standard portfolio assignment that I give students, whether it's a course or for the degree, is this. In light of learning outcomes for this course, here's what I've learned. 2, here's evidence from the work that I've done this semester to support my claims about what I have learned. 3, here's why I think the evidence I'm providing to support my claims is good evidence. And 4, here's how I think I will use this learning in the rest of my academic life, my professional life, maybe my civic and personal life as well. And so you see the 4 ways that they're thinking forward from the class that they're in right now.
As someone in the design school, actually, in a similar situation, I don't use a lot of these technologies in the standard studio for practice setting. Right? Very, very limited number. So what I did for my own teachings, I went over and talked to Cecil Ballmont, Olvera, major engineers who does this work throughout the world.
So I know exactly who that is.
I took the students over there and I said, okay. And his suggestions were very good. Let them understand the physics of matter in real space, understanding hydrology with water, right? Not a simulation of water, the real water, and how that really moves. So that kind of physics of matter, the chemistry of matter, and how they just haven't touched this matter or been aware of it. And then, how do I begin to envision or visualize it abstractly, utilizing various software programs? But I think it was really the thing that changed the most, because we were doing various physical things, virtual things, was taking over and saying, how does it work in a major engineering, international engineering firm? How is that structure being put at? How is it really being these questions that we're confronting as professionals? How do we really start to address them? And some of these tools will appear, collaboration, certain ways that they're trying to placing those students in the same questions.
Max, could I add something here? Bobby Lafford again. No, I sympathize with the, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, the colleague from design. Okay. Thank you. Good to meet you. Anyway, what we do, of course, in a lot of the Spanish content that I've been talking about is we do lecture capture. So in other words, in your design course, I'm assuming there might be some parts of a lecture that perhaps you could capture beforehand, and maybe even some sort of animated simulation of this is what we are building. And there may be something like that that's already great online. You could require them to look at that. You could actually do a lecture so that that's embedded in the lecture, and then they have to look at that before they come to class. And then in class, you can have more time to apply some of the concepts, et cetera, so that you don't have to take up class time explaining, you know, tensile strength and things like that they probably already know. But
they claim they don't know it, but
for me, well,
I've had a lot of people claim that I have to backtrack 3 or 4 courses and teach them fundamentals before, but that's probably another conversation.
But my point is, I think the wonderful thing about flipped classroom, you don't have to. What Max has presented beautifully today are a lot of information. There are a number of philosophies that are sort of been telescoped into one presentation. And so you can, if you feel more comfortable sort of easing into it, to save you time and to give the students more time to like re-listen to the material. So if you have some things you could give as a lecture, for instance, constructs, you know, how to do this, you know, this kind of thing. They read it in the book, but maybe you want to do a PowerPoint on it. You do it, they listen to it before class. You may even give them a little quiz after that. Then they come to class knowing, you know, that they have, quote, read the material or watched the material, and then you spend more time in the class actually saying, okay, remember the video, it said this, I'm going to show you now how to do that, and more time with hands-on. So it's a way of kind of giving you actually more class time by putting a lot of the lecture in the ether, so to speak. They have to look at it, and then they're more prepared for class, and they can come and actually apply what they've learned. And it sounds like your courses are essentially applied. I mean, you want them to know certain things, but you want to give them a lot of hands-on time, and you'd have more hands-on time if you didn't have to spend part of that going over some concepts. So that...
And Barbara, can I
certainly
just add one quick thing?
This is Eric.
Yeah, this is Eric. As you just mentioned that regularly you'll have to go back 4 or 5 different classes. You can automate those pathways. And so if someone needs to understand what are the fundamentals of whatever that principle is, you can point them to a series of lectures or a series of activities that they can go through, so you don't have to use class time for the people that are caught up. And so basically it's thinking about how do you design this so that there are these paths for each individual to get caught up in their own pace and their own time, and you can facilitate that. But you don't have to use everybody's attention and everybody's time to do that.
I think recently I was out seeing a math class, and they were using the Khan Academy for remedial only. And it was their way to actually allow mention of the class, oh, you don't know what basic statuses are? Here, Khan Academy, right? But this idea that there is this specialized thing. Sorry, I stepped in.
I don't know. I was just going to say, I think that might be touching on something that I'm not sure is appropriate for this forum, but you know, knowledge versus laziness maybe is they were taught it but they don't remember it, or they don't want to put the work in to build up to it, and then you know, so even if you require them to watch the videos, I mean, what's sort of the detriment that they're lost in class, or that no, they'll just drop, and then there goes our DEW. So. Which we all know is important to keep an eye on that.
So, yeah, I guess I've used. Marshall, can you hear me from what campus?
And you are?
Oh, I'm Bridget Crow-Miller. I'm in the School for the Future of Innovation and Society.
Okay.
So I'm a geographer by training. So at my previous institution that I just came from, I was teaching, one of my classes was an online hybrid. And so I used a number of the strategies and tools that we talked about. You know, I had people listen to podcasts or watch short videos. I didn't have anybody make podcasts. That's an interesting idea that I might explore a little bit further. I recorded short lectures sometimes, so I didn't have to use time in the classroom for that. I had people go out and take photographs, you know, thinking about what nature is in the city, and take pictures of things that spoke to them in that area, and then share those pictures with the rest of the class and kind of talk about specific points there. And I didn't ever find a good tool for that in terms of the sharing. You know, I had them then email me the pictures, and then I would just put them all up.
I've
with
talked to
little
a number
captions,
of
so.
computer science friends about developing an app or something.
Uh-huh.
There's interest in that, but it, nobody sees any money in it.
Right, yeah, and there's Flickr, but then they have to join it, and so that
You need
never
a
worked out.
curatorial wall.
Yeah, something like that. You know, I tried to do kind of community engagement type projects where students have to go out and talk to people in their neighborhood or petitioners engaged in specific issues. But I guess I never really thought of any of this as flipping the classroom. But it sounds like there are a number of other tools that I haven't really thought about. The portfolio tool sounds like an interesting thing that I might look into further. I haven't done much in terms of engaging with professionals. You know, if students are engaging with community members or practitioners, it's more interviewing them or that kind of thing, but not really working with them. There might be some opportunities there. One of the classes I will be taking next semester is, I think, fully online with development practitioners around the world in various countries, and so very international groups. So something that I've struggled with is how to keep that discussion piece going in an online or hybrid setting. And I think even when you start getting over 30 or 40 students, it's difficult to incentivize that because then you're stuck doing all of the grading. You know, if you want somebody to make a post and then that same person also has to respond to at least one other post and you've got 60 students, then you suddenly have 120 boxes to tick. You know, so I'd be interested in hearing from other people if they have strategies for incentivizing that type of discussion in a large class or even 5,000 students. But even with 30 or 60 students, it adds up quickly.
I found one, this is really simple, and you've probably already tried it, but as soon as I got 25 or 30, I started dividing them into groups, and some of those discussions were in the groups.
Right.
Now, your time, absolutely, what I find I don't know if my administrators should hear this, but in the beginning, you give tons of feedback because they want to know, am I on?
Right.
But after a while, you can poke in. You're still going to have to watch, and you're going to have to maintain that. But you can play back a little bit because you're maintaining a whole group. But the groups working together, they get to know each other, and sometimes that's a little more incentive to them because it's not just I'm getting points. It's I'm having a real discussion with 6 people.
Right. And so how did you get people to engage in the group? What was the format? Was that like written engagement? Like they have a forum and then everybody...
Mine were written, but you can do so many better ways of doing that, like with the video that you start out with.
Yeah, we do video collaboration. I'll talk about it during the large lecture.
Okay.
But we do peer-to-peer grading.
Okay.
With the writing center involved in it. And overnight, everything went up like tenfold because instead of just you waiting for you, suddenly they're waiting for each other and encouraging each other to write better. Let's go to the writing center together. You know, and especially because of the demographics across the course. You have 30% Chinese or whatever, depending on the course, and that's us. That's a huge thing because English is the second language plus this kind of immersion. So we're experimenting, but we'll talk about that.
Just as a sort of a process question, is the Writing Center prepared for everybody to send them more students?
Well, there's a point that you make appointments with it. The way that it's worked, you guys.
We also do drop-in with the Writing Center, but for appointments we can plan ahead. But if you're getting at, if numbers grow substantially, we're prepared. That's when I go back to the pros and say,
It's probably appreciate if there's a group project to let them know in advance that their students are going to be coming in to.
And is the Writing Center a resource for online?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
It's huge. But I think there are a lot of resources out there. See, what we don't know is what you're doing, and that will really help us. And that's the reason we want to do more of these workshops, so we can help connect you with resources, connect you with people, have time to talk about your various interests.
find out what resources we still need.
Right.
Because, I mean, you guys are the next frontier of working with these techniques and this technology. So, you know, as we move forward, we need to know what needs to be provided to enhance the, you know, the student's experience. You know, this is great, all this stuff you're doing. So we need to also be aware of it, so we know how to support it.
Question. Yeah. So I think contacted by publishers, and they give you, there is a possibility to have sort of online tutorial that comes with a textbook where they can go through problems in a more interactive way, but they have to pay for that. So this is something that we, you know, ASU would recommend. So you buy the textbook for $150 plus this $100 this tool that is more interactive and go through each step of the problem.
My response would be that you should evaluate that tool, and will that tool give them added benefit that's worth that $100? Right?
What are the other costs associated with the course? Is this the only cost associated with it, or is this, you know, is it going to add up to $1,000 for them by the time we're through?
Yeah, the biggest reason students leave ASU or other universities is financial.
So I'd say it's Facebook.
Yeah, that's why I would try to do my best to help on that part. I don't want you to spend $100. I want to teach you how to solve the problem with me.
But I mean, there are these platforms, there are these particular hours. I see, you know, where actually Michael Crow is behind this meeting, so we're going to probably have to cut this off. Okay. I hate to do that, but we can actually move outside or downstairs and continue the conversation. Evaluate it, bring it to your colleagues, have a kind of conversation about that. Definitely take it to your chair or director to have that kind of conversation also. Thank you for your time today. Definitely, if you're interested in other technologies, let us know. Okay, we're happy to structure the workshops accordingly.
And we will be sending around some feedback forms because, as I said, this is a pilot program. How can we make it better? You know, how useful is it? What can be changed? Whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Have a good one.